Welcome to the Creative Tools Podcast. My name is Ashay, and I'm immensely passionate about using technology for creativity. On this podcast, I talk to various creators about what tools and technology they use to be creative. My guest today is Paul Turner. Musician, writer, video maker, artist, event planner, and producer, Paul is a multi-hyphenate creative who, in his own words, strives to fail at something new every day. He grew up in the heart of Silicon Valley, went to school in Boston, and now makes his home in Santa Cruz, California, where he has opened a new business called Super Original. An art project in itself, Super Original harkens back to the classic salons, serving as part gallery, part laboratory, and part clubhouse for other creatives who are trying to make their dreams into reality. Hey, Paul, thanks a lot for visiting my podcast.
Good morning, Ashay. It's great to be here.
Great to meet you too. So my first question is, what do you create?
What do I create? Oh man, what do I not create? Um, it's a tough question. For me, I create whatever I want. So I don't really consider myself like a painter or a sculptor or a musician or a filmmaker. I kind of consider myself any of those things. So it's whatever crazy idea comes into my head at the time, or whatever somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, we should do something together." And I go, "Great." So creation for me is all around. Creation for me is not also just individual pieces of art. Creations for me are events, or a meal, or a party, a dinner party. I like to think my creative spirit kind of interweaves it throughout my entire life. So yeah, it's tough to nail down what do I create, but I create a lot of things. I've done some big pieces. Did a nice piece out of a bunch of gift cards, a big 4-foot mosaic out of gift cards, 9,216 individual gift cards. I make short films. I make little sculptures out of Legos. Sometimes it's rare, but I'll paint you something from time to time. I've written a bunch of songs, lots of things.
Nice.
And I've thrown a lot of events over the years. That's one of the things that I'm really interested in, because I think it's like art that is temporary. An event, a party can only last, for a temporary period of time, but you get the most kind of instant gratification out of your audience because you're experiencing that art with them, and you can kind of be whatever you want it to be for them.
So have your creations always been something physical that people can experience, or you have also created digital creations?
Oh yeah, I think digital is the new way that we're doing things in general. Like, so I went to music school in the 90s because I'm an old guy, and it was just at the time when we were kind of bringing it all together with synthesizers and MIDI, and I actually got in trouble. I remember getting in trouble. I took an editing class because I went to a music school, and they wanted to make sure that if you're getting these kind of technical degrees that you actually had skills that you could use in studios and things. And I did a sound effects class, and they're like, "Hey, take this clip." I think it was of Bruce Lee, and they said add sound effects to it. And I said, "Great." I said, "Here's your razor blade and here's your tape." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Sure, I get it. Like, they're trying to teach me a trade, but I wanted to learn what I thought was the future." And I was always kind of a troublemaker in school. Luckily, the head of the department was on my side a lot of the time. So I took this tape and I digitized it, and I put it into a Packard Bell, probably 12 megahertz computer at the time. Probably was through the roof at that that moment. And I edited in the sound effects with precision, using at that time digital technology. Then I printed it back out to the VHS tape and brought it in, and the teacher just failed me immediately. Failure. You did not take you did not do the assignment. I said, "Yeah, but I did the assignment like in in a totally different way. Like I changed what the assignment was, and we went back and forth. And the head of the department, who again was a friend of mine and an advocate for mine, stepped in. And so I ended up, going back and proving that I was able to use a razor blade and tape, but I also changed the game on it. So yeah, we've been doing digital forever. Um, I
What do you do with the razor blade? I mean, just like physically scratch the tape? Is that what you do with the razor blade?
Yeah, you take an audio tape and you literally take an audio tape and you scrub it back and forth against the magnetic head until you find the sound effect, and you there's a little like block, you slice
Ah,
the
okay,
tape.
okay,
Then
okay,
you take a specialized tape and you tape the two pieces of tape back
okay.
together so that the sound effect of Bruce Lee hitting someone sounds like right on point. And the funny thing is like, Bruce Lee is notorious for extremely fast hits. So everyone who's doing the tape version of it didn't get the sound effects right. And I had a very precision, based playhead. So mine was extremely accurate, but in a weird way, almost didn't work as well because it
Yeah,
was too good.
too good. Yeah, yeah, too
Yeah, the good
perfect.
part about the good part about Bruce Lee was it's always just like kind of a little off.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I had to prove that I could do the tape exercise, and I passed the class. But I've been doing digital for years. I've been experimenting with digital, because I grew up in this area. I had the
Yeah.
first 128K Mac, which I still have downstairs. My dad um, worked for a company called Computer Poet when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, 6 years old, 128K Mac came out, and it was a computer that was like a kiosk, and you'd put in a name of someone and what did they do, and it would print you out a poem on this tractor paper with like a little strip of like glue on one side. And then you'd go, and it was in greeting card shops, and then you'd go over to this like other side and you'd pick a front for the greeting card, you'd peel off the strip, and it would be a custom greeting card,
Hmm.
1985, right? Built out of a 128K Mac. My dad was a salesman back then, and the funny thing is, when I got my current job, I looked back and I work in technology now, and I was like, I wonder what this Computer Poet thing is. And there's an article in Computer World that has my dad quoted in it, and he says, when I first saw this thing, I knew that technology was like kind of the wave of the future, and I kind of dropped everything I was doing, and I wanted to show everybody this technology. And I thought, my dad passed shortly after that, so like, many years later, looking back on this article, I thought, working in this field now, I think he would be really, really proud of me. But
Hmm.
yeah, we've been doing digital for years. I took that computer home and just went nuts on it. I was like, what can this thing do? Just I've always been kind of working in that world. I think we have a big problem. I mean, not to segue for you here, but I work with a lot of artists now, and they're all working on iPad now. They're all working in digital media, and we've the news right now, the chat GPTs, the
Hmm.
lenses, the digital art. And in talking to people and trying to connect customers with these really talented artists, you know, um, value comes from scarcity. And when you can just print unlimited amounts of the thing that you make on an iPad, people don't see as much value. It just becomes stuff that you buy at like cost plus imports, and it doesn't become very unique pieces of art. So the artists that I work with really struggle to create physical embodiments of this digital work that still have value. And
Yeah.
so, I work with an artist, and she will print these. I mean, she's just so prolific with the iPad. They're beautiful pieces, but she'll only print like 3 of them. And she'll print them with 3 different print houses so that the colors are unique. Or she'll call a print house and go, what medium do you have? And they go, oh, we got some vellum over here. And she goes, okay, I want to do this on that vellum. And A, she's helping them get rid of stuff that they have in their stock, and B, she's creating something that's really unique that hopefully she can charge enough money for to pay her rent. So digital is a wild world that we're in, and it kind of changes the game on value, and then also kind of what is art. If
Yeah.
Lenza can take a picture of you and make 1,000 portraits and 1,000 different pop art styles, are those art? Are they not art? Do they have value? Are they interesting? What are art galleries going to be in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I had written an article few months ago on disposability, like
Right.
we have moved from art, analog art being inherently destructive at first to being non-destructive, where you have like power of undo.
with digital. And
Yeah.
then you move to cloud where you don't have to delete anything. Like you can preserve every single thing
Yeah.
forever. And now we are in this new era, which is the data science and machine learning, where uh, it's not a transactional relationship with the tool. It is a companion creating with you. So you just need to use it wisely.
Sure. I
Um,
mean, we talk about right now the death of expertise, right? Right. If computers and websites and all these things can do all these things for us,
yeah.
um, that we don't have this value in stores anymore. You know, you go into I mean, the old Home Depot, I don't know how old you are, but when Home Depot opened up, they said, you're going to come to this hardware store because we've got former contractors working on every aisle. You can come in, you can ask a question, and we will literally show you how to fix the thing in your house or do the thing
Mm.
in your house. And, now I don't know that that's true. I think that people go into Home Depot looking for the thing that's on sale. And I think they market it like that. They're
Right.
like, we have the lowest prices of anyone. We're the lowest prices, lowest. The expertise have died because now you can go on the internet and buy things. I used to work at a store in San Francisco called Computers and Music. It was founded in 1983. So it predated MIDI, the computer
Wow.
music spec, by 1 year. Joe West, a wonderful man. I walked in there one day and I said, hey, what's the store? And he told me, and I said, I didn't have a job at the time. And I said, hey, you looking for work? And he goes, oh, that's kind of funny because the guy just quit. So I started the next day, and I worked there for a while. And it was a consultancy, really. We sold stuff. We had to sell stuff to pay the bills, but in reality, we were the anti-Guitar Center. We
Mm.
were the anti of all these things because we weren't competing on price. And people would call us all the time, what's your price on this? And be like, listen, we don't do that. But we had a bench of famous people that would call us all the time at 3 a.m. And whenever, if you gave out your phone number, you expect to get a call, but they wanted to know, like, hey, I'm stuck in this thing, or I'm trying to hook up this to this to this. Do you have a part that does that? Or what software do I need to hook these things up? We were the expertise store.
Yeah.
And that was during a time when I think expertise, Amazon was, just starting to become, 13% lower than any other store. And we were all about expertise. And unfortunately, computers and music never survived. But it was a fantastic place to work, especially for, you talk about creativity and tools. Like that's all we did is,
Yeah.
people would call us up and said, hey, I have got this great idea. How do I make this? What software or hardware do I need to make this happen? And we were like, come on in, let me show you. It
You
was
you you
fantastic.
mentioned about computers and music. I was in Milan a few years ago, and then there was this. It was like a traveling museum, but it was in Milan at that time called Da Vinci Museum, and every single invention or innovation that Da Vinci created was it. And then I saw there a mechanical synthesizer. It was so amazing to see. Like I played around with MIDI as well a lot, and like you use the same keys, but then you can create different um, instruments, right, with it. But he had a mechanical wooden synthesizer with the keys, and then you can recreate some other sounds with that mechanical. It was unbelievable to see like this kind of things also existed like a way in the past. So it's interesting to see that. It was interesting to see that. Um,
Anything can be a creative tool, though, right? I mean,
yeah,
anything can be a creative tool. I mean, we talk about music, right? And we think that like the first music was like drumming or percussion, right? We assume that. And you assume that that's with someone's hand. Well, the first piece of music technology then was a stick, right? Because somebody probably was like, man, my hand hurts. And then like, well, if I just take this
right,
stick, I can make the same sound. And you're like, well, that's the first instrument right there, is a
right.
stick. And I think that and this concept that dance music or synthesizer music is digital is fascinating to me. I studied a lot of this stuff. And if you think about like physical instruments, a lot of physical instruments like horns and violins don't sound actually like things in nature
Hmm.
at all. A trombone does not sound like anything that I've heard. But when you listen to a synthesizer, those waveforms, the sawtooth, the sine wave, the way an envelope works, are actually mimicking more natural sounds than they are mimicking what I would say, quote unquote, are digital sounds.
Hmm.
So it's fascinating what we consider kind of digital. Digital could be either the mechanism, but I also think that people think it's a genre.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I'm right in the middle where I think it's, means and it ends.
So, for the remaining time that we have, I just want to talk about three things, and then your
Sure.
thoughts on those three things. So, um, the three sections that I want to take this discussion to is pre-creation, creation, and post-creation.
Mm.
So, what I mean by pre-creation is I want to focus mainly on inspiration. Creation is the actual creation part, and then the post-creation is maybe we can talk about social media at that time. So, so for pre-creation, um, for your creations or your thoughts on how do you record and how do you retrieve inspiration that hits you when you
Yeah.
want to create something. So, what tools and technology do you use to record inspiration? And second important point is how do you retrieve it when you want to create something based on that inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about pre-creation, creation, and post-creation, and when I think of those three things, I think of stress, stress, and stress. Like they're all three of the exact same thing, and they're just
Exactly the
different
same thing.
different stresses. To me, I find that having a creative mind, um, it's like, I don't know, it's tough to describe for people who don't have it, or I mean, I don't know. I think everybody's creative, but for me to describe my mind is that there's thousands of ideas floating through my mind constantly.
Right.
And the good ones to me, like these you talk about pre-creation, they're curses. They're literal curses. Like they lead to depression.
Yeah.
When you have a great idea, it's not a great idea where you say like, "Oh, yes, I've got this amazing idea." You don't ride high on that forever because you have this great idea and then you have this realization. You're like, damn it, now I have to make that. Now I have to figure out how to get that out of my head. And if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it forever. I'm going to be mad at myself. I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to say, why am I not working on this? Why am I devoting all this time to doing X, Y, and Z and not doing that awesome idea that I've had for 20 years or 7 years? When I did the gift card project, which was taking these gift cards that I'd found in a box somewhere, 40,000 old test gift cards, and I said, well, that needs to be something, and then I figured out that it needs to be some type of mosaic, and then I figured out how hard that would be. That was just years of fretting, so that pre-creation phase, to me, is a bit of a curse. Now, when you have, going back to your question of like the technology of capturing those pre-ideas, for me, a lot of it is just carrying around like a notebook.
Hmm.
I have multiple notebooks. There's one right here. Um, and it's just trying to get it out of your head as fast as possible because it will cloud your other thoughts. You'll also forget it. So if you don't capture it, you'll have this fantastic idea. You'll be out with friends and you'll be like, oh, what we should do? And then you're like, I'll write it down later. And then you're in the car and you go, what was that thing I ever,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So it's gone. So you've got to get it out of your head, but also you've got to get it out of your head so some other idea can get in there as well.
correct.
So the problem for me is prioritization and just capturing. So a lot of it for me, I've tried phones, but I think when you pull out a phone, it changes the way that you interact in the world. People are like, oh, am I bugging you? And you're like, no, I'm just writing something down. And they're like, oh, and that just kind of hits the brakes on natural communication. But grabbing a post-it note, or even just pulling out, a pen in a little notebook, seems a little more natural. Gosh, I wish I had better handwriting though, because there's a couple notes that I think were probably fantastic ideas, but they read as like, because I wrote them so quickly, like in the dark, and I'm like, what is this? Like one day I'm gonna remember and I'll be like, yes, but right now it's just so pre-creation for me is a lot of that. A lot of it is problem solving, like I look at things and go, how can I make something better? Which people don't like. I mean, I think being a creative, a lot of the time, one of the best lessons that I've heard in pre-creation phase is maybe ask people whether they want to know that information. Friends who have a restaurant, friends who have a piece of art, friends who are doing anything or anything out there in the world, what you don't want to walk up to them and goes, you know what you need, you know what you want, you know what you should do with this, this, that's the name of your band isn't very, it should be this, people don't want that. They didn't ask you for that. So you really have to get used to framing and holding back, like write it down. There's a guy I've worked with for years, and he uses his notebook quite frequently. And I was like, "Oh, you must have like tons of great ideas." And he says, "No, I have a ton of terrible ideas, like terrible
Hmm.
things that I think I would say. And when I think that I'm going to say something, I just write the thing that I'm going to say down so that I don't say it out loud. And then if it's important, I'll follow up with it later. But it keeps me from saying the thing to the person that I have this idea, but they're not in the place to have that idea,
Uh-huh.
which I think is quite a great tool. I
But
wish
this
I
is
had a
all
little
of
bit more of that.
Yeah, but I mean, this is recording the idea, I understand. But most of the times, what happens, like I'm a filmmaker, so when I make
Yeah.
films, uh, I'm not making films all the time. But I'm watching a lot of films, or lot of content every single day. So whenever I think something is inspiring, I maybe text it to myself or write it down.
Yep.
But then the moment of inspiration hitting and the moment of creation could be separated by years. So then I find it extremely hard to even remember that I had written this idea like 2 years ago. And then how do I go back to that idea very quickly to use that as an inspiration in my creation? So how do you retrieve it? Like that I maybe
Yeah.
the most important thing I want to understand in this. Like how what technology could be used to retrieve an idea that you have recorded um,
Yeah.
weeks, months ago?
I use a lot of voice notes in the car. Like I like to write music a lot of the time. If I'm writing songs, I'm writing while I'm driving. I think that kind of I write. I usually have the most inspiration in a white noise or kind of environment. So like the shower is a great place for me to which there's no way to write anything down in a shower. So I keep a phone there and I just kind of talk into it. For me though, I think that back to your question, I think the best ideas are the ones that stick with you.
Mm,
So writing them down is great and retrieving them is great, and having some type of like ideas repository that you can search and you can tag things is great. And I know people live off that. I know
right.
stand up comedians like deal with it, things like that. But I also know, and I've and from talking to a lot of creatives over the years, is like the best ideas are the ones that you remember the next day and
Mm.
that you can't stop singing. It's like the best songs that I've ever written are ones where I don't really need to go back to the voice note,
Right.
where it's still in my head the next day, and then I'll write the next part to it, and then I'll write the
Right.
next part to it. And if it sticks in my head day after day, and if I forget it the day and I go, oh, that one probably wasn't as good as I
It
thought it
wasn't a
was.
yeah.
The only problem with that though is I think I spent a week driving back and forth from Santa Cruz to Silicon Valley, and I was using my voice notes to create this beautiful song, just a banger. It was great, real funky, real homage to Stevie Wonder. And then I realized it was actually just an old Stevie Wonder song. Like I listened to all the parts back, I kind of assembled them back and I put them in the garage band for like a little spec, and I was like, wait a minute, this is an actual Stevie Wonder song. You I mean, I just was laughing at myself. I've done that several times, just thought of a great idea and then realized it was something I already did.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
was an idea that I had already have, like, oh, I'm gonna make this card for someone and it's gonna have this thing in it. I'm gonna do this great thing for them for their birthday, and be like, wait a minute, I did that like 4 years ago already. A lot of
Um,
great ideas. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't have a trick to recall. I don't know. I think the best ideas are the ones that you remember.
Yeah. It becomes extremely difficult for me to even like remember a sketch. So I when I was talking to other creators, they some folks told me that okay, they write down everything that is surrounding them at that point when the idea comes to their head. Like what are they smelling? What's the weather and all that stuff, so that they can maybe go back to that experience again. Some folks told me that they have like a schedule of going through these ideas every single day or every single week. That I mean, instead of scrolling on social media, they scroll through their ideas, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, these are some great ways and tricks on going through your ideas. But yeah,
yeah.
I was just curious.
My
Uh,
coach, just to add on to that, I have a coach, and he actually isn't super keen on the notebook.
hmm,
I mean, he's an open to anything kind of guy, but he has reminded me several times that active listening and active thinking are really important, and that sometimes we use note-taking and capture devices as a crutch to not paying attention, to not being fully in the moment.
Mm.
And he reminds me quite frequently, like, listen, you don't need to write that down. Like, well, I'll be in our session and I'll write something. He's like, do you really need to write that down? Or can we make a connection about it? Can we make this moment about that? And can we actually put it into our bodies and into our minds and into our souls and make it about who we are going forward? So I find that also to be quite, I mean, I'm getting older, so I got to write things down, but I like being reminded of that fact quite
Yeah.
frequently,
Yeah.
whether I put it to practice.
So now let's talk about the creation part. So for your actual creation, so I will tell you my thinking process about it. Okay. So usually in creations, I find two main steps. One is building a prototype of your creation or previs your creation, and then creating or shaping the prototype. And what usually happens is when you're building a prototype or a previs with whatever tools you have, you actually build the entire creation in your head before it appears in front of you, and then you gather data, you gather raw material and stuff, and then the process of shaping a prototype is actually uncovering from the mess that you have to um, to reach the creation that you are seeing in your head. So which I feel very much in filmmaking is storyboarding is my shaping a prototype. While I'm storyboarding, I'm building the film in my head, and then when I'm editing, the actual thing is I'm removing stuff so that I can reach the film that I was seeing in my head. So do you also have similar experience of creation, and what tools do you use to maybe previs your creations and uh, shape those creations later?
Yeah. I mean, art is constraints. Art is constraints.
Hmm.
You wouldn't make Mount Rushmore if you had 1,000,000 pounds of clay. Somebody, like, I forget who did it, but they looked up at that thing and they said, hey, I can carve some faces into that, you know, right? So, having this wonderful vision in your head of what something is, if you had Spielberg's DP and, unlimited resources, you'd probably make a total piece of crap,
Hmm.
you know? I mean, Spielberg, go back to Spielberg, Jaws wouldn't have been as awesome if
Yeah,
the shark worked,
yeah.
you know? The shark didn't work. And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I have to figure something out here. And he had constraints and he created art. That's what I kind of worry about with the kids right now, and like Minecraft and this world that they live in where they have unlimited Legos. When I was a kid, we couldn't afford unlimited
Yeah.
Legos.
Right.
I had to beg to get that next Lego. And that made me make creations that were limited because I had limited Legos. I had limited money. I've always had limited resources. I've worked since I was 13, 14 years old. I've, never not had a job. And I've spent a lot of my extra money on learning through experience. That computer I talk about that I had in college, well, I worked at a CompUSA in college so that I could buy computers so I could learn how to use them. I hated going to class. I don't like learning in a lecture. And I don't think, if you look at statistically, only 10% of learning is really done, in a training environment. 70% is done with experience. And for me, it's all about experience. So when I'm creating, constraints are fantastic. I love that. I love having like a storyboard in my head and then getting it out and being like, well, this is total crap, like having to figure out what works and what doesn't. What works for me though, and what doesn't work for me is ego. I get embarrassed to show people things, or if I'm going through something, though, you want feedback. You want people to tell you like, hey, this isn't great. But you also, like, your ego kicks in and you're like, no, you don't get it. So I'm not going to show it to people. And in reality, you gotta show it to some people because, feedback is good. The opposite side of that is a lot of, famous and great creators talk about how don't make art for other people.
Yeah.
Make art for yourself. Like, one of my favorites is Mel Brooks. And he just constantly talks about how, like, I don't make movies that I think other people are going to laugh at. I only make movies that I laugh at. And if you happen to laugh at them too, that's fantastic. And I guess that's what I've made a career on. You hear that a lot. You hear that with a lot of famous people. You hear that with a lot of famous people who didn't make it until their 40s or 50s, because they just kept on doing what they loved, and eventually other people found what they loved as well. So yeah, back to your point, like the technology of creation for me, I think, is more human than anything else. It's removing your ego sometimes, or trusting your instincts, and getting feedback is the best tool, and you can do it in subtle ways. You don't have to say, like, send your mix constantly to your friends, go, what about
Mm.
this, what about this, what about this? You can ask questions. You can say, like, hey, I'm thinking about this in a certain way, like, what are 5 things that you love about this song?
Yeah.
I love what Rivers Cuomo has done. I don't know if you know who that is, from Weezer, but he's got these notebooks, and so he just goes through songs that he loves, and he writes all the cool things about them down in the notebooks: song structure, chord structure, instrumentation, production. And so all the songs that he loves, he kind of takes apart how they're made and what
Hmm.
is great about them. And so when he's building stuff, he doesn't go back and listen to a song so that he doesn't go and, like, reproduce a song, but what he uses is, he goes, okay, there's a common thread here, that, like, fuzz, distortion in this way, it creates this type of tone, and when he wants to create that type of tone, he uses what is tried and true over 10 songs that he's loved over the years. So again, I think the technology of creation is a lot of feedback.
So uh, how would technology help creators to get feedback then? And
Oh,
what
I
are you
mean,
what are your thoughts on
that's
that?
the greatest part about it right now, and probably the curse, right? Everybody on earth is putting up their stuff on the internet. Everybody thinks they're an influencer. Everybody thinks they have to be an influencer right now, which is starting to really scare me a little bit. That we're creating this culture where everyone has to have some type of exceptionality, and I think it's creating a lot of depression with our youth, and even our non-youth, is seeing everybody at their greatest moment, or seeing them able to do, like, some kind of impossible flip cup thing, or whatever, that they've decided to post online, not showing the fact that it took them 6 months to figure out how to do it. We just post the outcomes, and we expect everyone to give us praise. So technology is great for feedback, but I think it's also a curse. I think it creates a system where we're constantly very needy, and looking for that feedback, and not feeling in ourselves the power of creation. We're just feeling this power of affirmation.
Mm.
And so it's dangerous. It's a dangerous drug, because again, you will also homogenize art to a place where it's only what you will get positive feedback for. But that's not what art is. Art has to challenge people. Art helps you deal with the emotions of flying around on a rock at thousands of miles an hour in space. And that's not just showing people exactly what they want to see, in the these feeds, these TikToks, and so I think you can get feedback quite fantastically during with technology, and I think it does help art, but I think you have to be intentional about this.
Hmm.
You have to understand what you're looking for, and try not to get addicted to the drug of affirmation, which I think is not good for creation
Hmm.
and doesn't challenge things. And I think you see fantastic creators out there right now who are going their own way. I see a lot of people. I just met a gentleman who's got an art show in opening in Chicago right now. He came by, and I said, "Oh, let's be friends on Instagram." This is how it generally is with a lot of artists and creators. And he says, "Yeah." And he turned to his girlfriend, and he says, "Do you have your phone on you?" And he said, "I just taken Instagram off my phone for a while because it was becoming a hindrance to my creation.
Uh-huh.
Just checking other people's and getting all these likes for whatever he did,
Yeah,
it was starting to poison how he created." So
you're right.
his girlfriend friended me, and then I was able to follow him. uh but I loved that. I loved that he had that discipline, because he
Yeah.
was so true to his art. So I think technology is, there's a lot we can do, but there's a lot that we should be cautious of, and be really smart about.
I mean, I have a little bit of different view here, that with the social media, and then this is a great segue into the other topic that I want to talk about. But
Sure.
with social media, and with this disposability that we experience these days of creations, there is a tremendous power now to fail fast. right?
Yeah.
If you have to fail, and then you can experiment immensely fast with your creations and get feedback. But however, the downside of that is you can lose focus really quickly. Like for example, I am a creator, and the I'm kind of like you. Like it doesn't matter what my medium of expression is. So if I want to express, I could express through a podcast, I could express through an Instagram post, I could express through a voice note. But I want to express myself, right?
Yeah.
And because you can express yourself in different media very, very quickly these days, it kind of allows you to lose focus. Because okay, what do I actually enjoy? I don't know, because everything is so easy. So
Yeah.
there are no constraints for me to actually be an expert in something, because like all skills are kind of democratized now.
You want to
um,
talk about the best technology that we all could use for creation? And this is going to get real weird, but I think it's therapy.
oh
I
really?
think it's therapy. I do. I think that the ability like to do anything is going to be there, right? These, the fact that
Hmm.
you can't focus, you'll have a million tools, that tools are becoming cheaper and easier to obtain, that we have these phones in our pockets that can, edit,
Yeah.
4K video now. Like it's mind blowing. But how do we deal with the creative impulse? How do we deal with the ego? How do we deal with that art sometimes, a lot of the times, is about invoking emotions and emotions and trauma. um, I think that therapy, to be honest with you, if there's a subscription that I would tell anybody to get, it's not Procreate or Adobe. It's finding a fantastic therapist who can help you deal with all those things, especially in dealing with young artists over the years, and in music school. I've seen a lot of them burn out very quickly. I've seen a lot of people who turn to drugs, alcohol. I've seen a few of my friends die. And I think that as artists, we are very close to emotional tones that are somewhat sometimes dark. And again, they are helping other people work through their traumas, or we are working through our traumas. And I think therapy is the best tool, to be honest with you, that can really help artists. And I know that's not pure technology, but it's probably a fantastic technology that we should champion more.
Hmm. So last question,
Sure.
what is the vision you see for either your own creations or creators in future? Like how do you see creators creating in a different manner with the tools and technology that we see around us right now in future?
Yeah, I mean, the tools are getting better. AI is changing the game. I'm
Hmm.
concerned when I have an art gallery and I put up a bunch of beautiful stuff on the walls, and now there is a, meme out there where you can press a button and make also similar beautiful stuff.
Hmm.
Where's the value in this? Um, but again, I think that technology is always growing. We had the hand and we were pounding on something to make music. Now we have the stick. Now we have the
Yeah.
synth. It moves forward. So, you know, uh, people talk about like how this AI is going to ruin things. Well, you go like, well, let's talk about like dressmaking or something. Let's talk about clothing. And before, if you wanted a piece of clothing, you had to make the fabric itself. So you had to go loom that fabric, and then you had to go sew that into an outfit, right? Well, now you can buy fabric. Did buying fabric ruin clothing and fashion design? No, it only gave us these tools,
Yeah.
and then now we're taking them to a new level. So now we always build on top of technology,
Yeah.
right? It only makes it a richer and more interesting experience. Sampling. I came up in the music world right at the point of sampling. I mean, right at the point of sampling. We were making these beats back in the day, and everybody was, minds were being blown. Did sampling ruin music? I mean, maybe P Diddy did, but but it didn't. It allowed you to take collages of other things and make them into new things, and find, there's only 12 notes, right?
Yeah.
And find ways to remix notes into new textures, into new emotional, tones. And I think it's all starting to grow. I'm worried that we are monetizing everything. I'm not totally into the NFT world. I don't get it, to be honest with you, and I'm concerned. I know we can't sing happy birthday in a movie because we got to pay a license to something, but are we Are we going to create a world where we can't, the color red can't be put into something unless you have a license for it, that you can't, like, it's just a strange world. Art is meant to be enjoyed and shared. It should be accessible. I love free days at museums. I love a musician that doesn't even put a cup out. I love people that share and help each other. And so what I hope for the future of creation and technology is that we continue to use art to, again, figure out how to deal with the emotions of flying through a rock in space. And I hope that we use technology to help each other learn how to do art, learn how to express things with each other, and learn and share the emotion of, this experience of
Yeah.
being alive, of being a human.
Yep. Hey, thanks a lot, Paul, for all the insightful thoughts.
Sure.
It was great
Thanks for having
talking
me.
with you.
Yeah, always. Anytime.
Thanks for tuning in. If you are a creator, I would love to talk with you. Please connect with me through my website or social media. See you in the next episode.